So I am checking out X-Men 3 today, and this is actually some of my favorite humorous dialogue that I've read in a while. I see a lot of modern books actually try to succeed in making dialogue funny, but most often it falls flat for me because a lot of humor just doesn't appeal to me. And this is one of those times that I liked a lot of it. Some of the jokes I was like, okay, that's fine. The bottom line is I enjoyed this book, and I was actually smiling through a lot of this. So I'm gonna just go through and talk about some of my favorite parts of this, why I liked the writing, and like I said yesterday in my video, that's my focus of these videos, is talking about the writing highlights and what appealed to me so much. So if you've been paying attention to the House of X and Powers of X series, which, by the way, that's been my very favorite short miniseries in comics for years and years. I loved the dark, brooding nature of it, and that's really the kind of thing that I love in comics. And in the Dawn of X books, these books that have followed it, it's been X-Force that's really appealed to me the most. Fallen Angels has been great because of their kind of dark psychology that they get into here. And, Marauders has been very lighthearted. Excalibur has been very lighthearted. And this is actually the first writing from a really lighthearted book that kind of hit home for me, Don't get me wrong, there's something for everyone in the series, but everyone has their favorites, and that's where I'm coming from here. I liked this book, but what I'm really looking for is something that kind of resonates more with the same feel from House and Powers of X, and that is that dark, brooding kind of darkness looming over everything is kind of the feel I got from that. I still feel it in the X-Men here, but this issue takes kind of a break from it. Here in the very intro, we're seeing the mutants work out in the fields. Krakoa is a source for 3 healing plants. One of them extends human life, another one heals dementia, the other one is a super antibiotic. And, as the mutants are working, they're harvesting them to sell and exchange with human nations. 4 intruders come through the Krakoa portal, and they're making jokes right off the bat, references to Wizard of Oz. All of the invaders have this snarky attitude. They're making overuse of jokes, and usually when characters do that in stories, they're usually hiding some sort of trauma or some inner darkness, or they're looking to escape from something, And at the end of this book, we find out that that's definitely the case for sure. Just like in the case of so many, kind of comedians like Deadpool, in fact. He's a really dark individual. He wants to die, but he can't. I feel that's the same for these the invaders, I'll say for right now. And, they reveal in the very beginning that they're humans. And they slime the mutants with this slime gunk. We don't know what it is at first. And they start making these cuss word jokes, saying that they're there to love the S word out of flowers, They're clearly here to steal the medicine. So Jonathan Hickman is writing this. Lionel Francis Yu is on art. Jerry Ann Gillen and Yu are both doing inks. Sunny Go and Frank Burrito on colors. Burrito. And I apologize, I know I'm butchering someone's name. That is what I do. I feel like this issue steps it up in the art department for the last couple of issues, and it's always really good to see in issues when it consistently gets better. And I hope we, go along that same exact path here. I could actually feel the characters when they're having an emotional experience. And that's something that's really great. It's something that I just started feeling in this run of X-Men. And, art can be great, but if it really doesn't convey the emotion that is supposed to be conveyed in the situation, then it really isn't doing as much of its job as it could. And a lot of the times when I'm writing, I feel like it's important for me to show some emotional connections between characters, in real events. Of course, so the reader will empathize with them and step into the story deeper. And art can do the same thing if it's done right. again, I'm not an artist, but I can see when it happens, it's really great. So a lot of the moments here, I stepped into them, and a lot of it was actually humorous moments, and to make me laugh in a comic is actually pretty rare. So I enjoyed the art. I will just say that here, it's getting better as the series continues forward. So the council's all getting together to discuss, of course, what we saw at the very beginning of the book, and the invaders coming into the field and sliming the mutants, and our love triangle. It gets a little bit more heated here. This is the kind of Summers family drama that is really fun. And, in X-Men #1, we find out, of course, that Scott, Jean, and Logan love triangle has a fourth wheel, that Emma Frost is likely doing the nasty with Scott, and everyone is just one big happy poly family. And of course that's not the case, that everyone's happy with all of this. It's that could never work out. In a utopian society, you always have someone who is not happy with what's going on. Utopia can't be utopia. Some things like this will end up being dystopian, and you see this. You see this as Scott is talking to Jean. We see Emma from behind, like looking at them, very low-key look of scorn on her face. And Jean says, "Emma, nice of you to show up. In with the wind, not a hair out of place. Gotta tell ya, I love the shoes." "Why, thank you, Jean. I would offer to let you borrow them, but I think they're a couple sizes too small." Jean says, "That's so kind of you, but I'm not big on borrowing things. That's really more of a you kind of thing, isn't it?" And that sets the mood for this whole book, honestly. And from that point forward, I was really enjoying this issue a lot. The humor, and not all the dialogue was as good as those couple pages, but like I said, it did set the mood, and this is a good book. So apparently, the forced seizure of the gate on the island, it caused the island of Krakoa a lot of pain, and disturbances have been happening throughout. The wildlife is disturbed, a decrease in the landmass, and a lot of psychic noise between, all of the mutants that are psychic. And so we find out that this team of thieves is very unlikely a group of senior citizen ladies. And that in itself was, a bit to throw everyone off a little. And this is kind of a case of subverting expectations. And, before you say, well, that's terrible, in a humorous situation, that's actually good writing. Everyone can end up being a villain. And these ladies end up really making a convincing, determined case for evil villains to their core when we find out what they're all about and what they're doing. I like to think about writing tropes like, who would be the most expected villain, and then I like to deviate from it and throw off the direction of a story a little bit, which I will say this, it works best in comedy stories, when the villain or even the protagonist is the most unexpected or the worst person for the job. And this story, issue number 3, is purposely feeding off that kind of comedy aspect, the comedy trope of, the villain being very unexpected. I mean, all 4 of these women are in their 70s and 80s, so it's fun. So, and look, I know I mentioned before in another video, I've been talking about this a lot actually with some of my buddies, talk about comic books a lot, and I love those old X Factor books. I've been reading them, and the way the humor seemed to go with those issues, it's a lot of fun. And it felt like to me in a lot of sections of this story, the same kind of fun feeling and humor. And so I dig it. I really do enjoy it. So Emma, Scott, and Sebastian Shaw, they all have to take the long way around to get to the Savage Land to find the intruders that are hijacking and controlling the gateways. Emma even says it herself. The subversion of expectations with the elderly women robbing Krakoa. She says, "We've been invaded by octogenarians? That's unexpected." Their leader says, "We're hordeculture." So, I like this. So, Jonathan Hickman made a joke about hordeculture on social media today, and I didn't get it until I read this book. He made it early in the morning before, we were all able to make it to the comic book shop. And so I liked his tweet. I didn't get it, but it made me laugh, and I was like, it's probably about the comic today, because he does that a lot. And so this is mixing the word horticulture, which is, gardening, with horde, which is, like a large group of people, kind of ominous vibe to it. And Sebastian Shaw says, ask the question, horticulture? Like someone who sleeps around, horticulture. And so these women make another quip about Kansas, Wizard of Oz, and these ladies, their secondary job besides stealing Krakoa plants is apparently to make really bad jokes at each other's expense. But I did like the way that it was done, because kind of like I said, when characters seem to do that, there's a reason. They're doing it. They're covering up something dark, and these women are twisted to their core, like I'll talk about here in a bit. It doesn't work in a lot of situations, but it worked for X Factor back in the day, and it works here. I dig it. So I made another comment in one of my other videos about how I think a lot of the YouTube channels, they throw a fit if X Factor 71 was released today, because, through the whole book, there's this ongoing joke through the entire thing about being able to open a mayonnaise jar, not being able to open a mayonnaise jar. And, I laughed just like I laughed at these old ladies calling Emma an S-word with P problems who needs to wash herself off. Even Sebastian Shaw laughed at that. So, look, if some people don't like this humor, I get it. That's fine. I recommend this book. I recommend the humor. I may feel different tomorrow, but I don't think so. I'm glad that this book is on my pull list, and that I read something humorous that I really liked, because, I just get too serious in my literature. Just everything I read seems to be overly dystopian, Some of my favorite books are like 1984. And everyone's always in this huge turmoil, and let's laugh every once in a while. So this was a good break for me. So the monologue that ensues from Sebastian Shaw here is a really fun build up to Scott's very cheesy and cliche response afterwards. I'll just go through this. So this is Sebastian Shaw talking here. He says, so he's talking to these women that are robbing the island blind of their medicine, of their flowers. "I am the Black King of Hellfire Trading Company, who happens to be the rights holders to the product you are so clearly plan absconding with. Now, I am not a prude, nor am I an impractical man, and between us girls, over the years I too have been known to purloin precious items like those flowers you hold in your hand, and even flowers such as yourselves, for my own quite selfish and otherwise loin-related reasons. We are all self-serving. So surely, in the spirit of personal enrichment and the acquisition of all the things we desire, we can come to some sort of agreement. You get what you want, some of our product, without the stigma of theft, and we would get what we want, which is an understanding of how you have comprised what we believe to be a closed system of transit. You are thieves, and can be trusted to covet that which you do not own, and I am a devourer of both men and women, a carnivore. But fortunately for you ladies, I like my steak a little less seasoned. So why don't we make a deal? What say you?" And with that, these women slime him with that green goop. and we find out that green stuff inhibits mutant powers. And here comes the Scott cliche line of the year. Please step away from the aristocrat. I know he's an insufferable bore, and normally I'd let you ladies work, but he's our insufferable bore. So I don't know what it was about that extremely cheesy dialogue that didn't P-word me off, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the most, I don't know. I liked it. So look, even the conclusion of this book was pretty cliche, because it ends with a sizable monologue from the villains, just completely telling their whole entire master plan. And, you know, I'll say this, the most cliche moments in movies and comics are when the villains go on these sizable rants where they give all their motives, all of their secrets away. If you saw the latest Spider-Man movie and saw Mysterio's very long speech in the bar when he's talking to all the other villains and telling the exact plan and absolutely everything that happened, this was just like that. So, and this is when you find out that deeper darkness inside these women, why they are using humor to escape from the truth. And, you know, we find out that hordeculture, you know, horde and hordeculture mixed together, get it? They want to wipe out humanity because they believe that people are destroying the balance of the planet. So, you know, we're talking about a mass extinction event murdering billions and billions of humans, you know, based on fixing a problem that they saw with the world. And, you know, in this case, it was the mistreatment of the planet. So that's actually a really cool concept when you think about it. Kind of the message, if I had to say, there was a theme to this story. You know, people with well-meaning intentions justifying horrific things in support of a cause. You know, I like this. And this is kind of shaping up to have some similar themes that I saw present in House and Powers of X. And that is this. Things taken to the extreme. You know, extremism on any side, in any sense, it's going to be negative, right? And so, like I mentioned at the beginning, there was a reason for these ladies' attempts at humor throughout this whole book. They're really ignoring some seriously flawed logic, and they're ignoring the truth. And the truth is, well, that they're trying to wipe out humanity, right? So, like I said, I enjoyed this book a lot. Some of the humor was a little contrived, but, you know, I mentioned I think that this was a well-done humorous story and that it was funny. And, you know, I'm sure that future issues won't always have this kind of humor because, like I've mentioned before, you know, I really do prefer books that are more serious in tone. And that's why I feel like X-Force is becoming my favorite of the Dawn of X titles. I'd love to hear what y'all think about this, about the art, about the writing, about my perception of this. Am I wrong? I could very well be. This is just one person's opinion, and I love being wrong, and I love being told that I'm wrong, and I will absolutely listen to you tell me that all day. In fact, I'd love to hear your opinion. Please drop a comment below, like or dislike this video as you see fit, and I will do absolutely everything I can to put up a second video this week. You are the gateway into comics.